Test. That should work. I don't need. And I don't need. Yep, and that's working. All right. What's up, guys? We'll do an actual video now. Twitch isn't working. What? No, that's weird. Test. Why is Twitch not working? Okay, now Twitch is working. There you go. There we go. Silly Twitch. All right, guys. So now that I'm done messing around with all the silly testing, we can do an actual video. Trying to figure out how to get TikTok to work because I want to stream on TikTok. Very funny, April. Genius. Haven't heard that since like 4th grade. Very funny. Very funny. All right. Go to my content page. Content. Get rid of all my freaking test streams. Test stream. Test stream. Test stream. Test stream. Test. 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 Delete. Delete all those. Yeah. Delete all those. All right, let's get started. Hey guys, how's it going? Let's do some Frank Turek. I am not testing anything anymore. I was testing something else. Turn that on. All right. Now I can sit down. Lights, camera, action. So Ash, I was testing, trying to stream directly from Streamlabs to get TikTok to work. I'm going to try to get TikTok streams working. All right, let's get this started.
The reason that we believe Christianity is true is because the answer to 4 questions is yes. How about the first question? Does truth exist?
Sure. Well, I mean, actually, no. I mean, truth itself doesn't exist. Truth is a property of sentences. So, like if you have a sentence and the sentence is true because if it corresponds to reality. So like, I have like filters on this done. Filters. No filter? Filters? Yeah, I do. Filters. Like this. 0. Done. All right, there we go. So truth does not exist in and of itself. It is simply a property of sentences. Sentences are imaginary things. And the sentences exist, sort of, in our imagination. And so if a sentence is true, like if the sky is blue or whatever, then yeah, that there is truth in that sentence. But the truth itself doesn't exist anywhere in the universe. Truth is just a description of sentences that correspond to the universe. So truth does not technically exist.
Obviously, you hear people say all the time, there is no truth, or you got your truth, I got my truth, all truth is relative. When somebody says there is no truth, you ought to ask that person a question. You ought to say, is that true? Is it true that there's no truth? Because if it's true that there's no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true, but it claims to be true. In other words, it's a self-defeating claim.
Okay, so
of course there's truth. If there was no truth, an atheist couldn't be right that there was no God. So there is truth. Question number 2, does God exist?
Nope, definitely not. Silly Sky Daddy? Nah. What? No.
There are several arguments for the existence of God.
They're all garbage.
Let me just give you one. Even atheists today are admitting that space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing. Well, think about this.
Wait, what? Wait, what? Who? No one says that, Frank. No one says that everything came from nothing, Frank. This is not a thing that anybody says. No one says that space, time, and matter came from nothing, Frank. That's literally not a thing in physics. What is a thing is that space, time, and matter came from some other fundamental physical thing. It's called emergent space-time. Emergent space-time. Let's go here. No, I can't do that. Go down. Give me my emergent space-time. Emergent space-time. Emergent space-time. Emergent space-time. I see why I did that now. Emergent space-time. Space-time. Space-time is an emergent property from the dynamic of some other thing. Pull that one up. Pull that one up. Emergent. God damn it. Emergent property of an underlying microscopic theory. So no, Frank. We don't say it came from nothing. No one says nothing. Do you see that where it says from an underlying microscopic theory? It's not nothing. No one says these things came from nothing. They came from a more fundamental physical force. So incorrect, Frank. Frankity Frank. Frankie Frank.
Friends, if space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing, whatever created space, matter, and time can't be made of space, matter, and time. Now, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent...
Wait, where did you get this personal, intelligent junk from? That doesn't come from the argument. Like what? So spaceless, sure. Timeless, sure. Immaterial, nope. That doesn't follow. Doesn't need to be in space and time to be material. That's just one field. There could be other kinds of material stuff that are in different fields. So it doesn't mean it's immaterial. It means it's spaceless and timeless, sure. Powerful, I guess, since it created space-time, I guess. Yeah, sure. Personal, no. Agent, no. Intelligent, no. Neither of those come from that. Does not follow.
Cause, who do you think of? God. Now, we don't know it's the Christian God at this point, but we know it's a theistic God, a being who's beyond the world, who created the world. The third question is, are miracles possible? Obviously, Christianity can't be true.
Well, there's not like a logical contradiction in them. Like, they're not logically impossible. So I guess they're technically possible. This doesn't sound like a good argument, though. It's possible. Doesn't mean it's true. So magical leprechauns are possible. Does that mean magical leprechauns exist? No. I wouldn't think you would agree to that. Magical leprechauns are possible. It's possible the Christian God doesn't exist. Would you grant that's true because it's possible? No. So then saying it's possible isn't really good evidence of anything, is it?
True if miracles are not possible. But the greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred, and we have scientific evidence for it.
Wait, what? We do? Where does this? Because as far as I know in history, miracles aren't considered to be correct in anything in history. History thinks that it cannot conform or show miracles to be true. I think that's like the first sentence of Michael Licona's paper, Historians and Miracle Claims. Historians and Miracle Claims. Let's close this guy down. Pull this guy over here. First sentence. Most biblical scholars and historians hold to the investigation of miracle reports lies outside of the bounds of a historian acting within their professional capacity. So, nope. We don't have historical evidence of that. Like, what are you speaking about?
What's that? I just mentioned it. The
Shroud of
creation
Turin.
of the universe out of nothing. If Genesis 1...
No one says the universe came out of nothing. That is not a thing. Even in your theory, it didn't come out of nothing because God spoke it into existence. So it came out of God words. Or maybe creation ex God words. So no one says it came out of nothing. Not a thing.
One is true. Every other verse in the Bible is at least possible. Because if there's a being that can create the universe out of nothing, can he do whatever he wants inside the universe?
No. Can he create a round square? Can he create a rock so heavy you can't lift it? Can he solve sin without creating, sacrifices to random sky daddy by his, putting his son there that he must die and be crucified so that he can cure all sin? Is it possible for him not to do that? What a silly thing to say.
If he can create the whole show out of nothing, of course. He can resurrect Jesus from the dead or walk on water or part the Red Sea. He can do any of that.
Create magical pixie leprechauns.
So the final question, the fourth question, which gets us all the way to the Christian God is the New Testament reliable enough to show us that Jesus rose from the dead?
No, we already covered this. Most historians hold to it that the study of miracle claims lies outside of the bounds in a historian act within a professional capacity. We just showed that paper, Frank. Why are you repeating this, Frank? I just explained this to you, Frank. Did you not listen to me, Frank?
The reason we believe in Christianity is because an event occurred, the resurrection. Now, I have to ask you this. Why would the Jewish writers of the New Testament, all were Jewish with the exception of Luke, why would they invent a resurrected Jesus? Why would they say that a man who claimed to be God rose from the dead if it didn't happen?
Who cares? Frankly, whether or not they invented it didn't matter. It could be a delusion, a hallucination, a misconception. Like, there are lots of these things. People have delusions all the time. In fact, the idea that someone, like a loved one, rose from the dead is actually really common. It's called bereavement delusion. Bereavement delusion. Go back down here. Bereavement delusion. Proposed disorder for those who significantly function impaired by prolonged grief symptoms, 12 months. Grief hallucination. What are grief? Grief hallucinations are a normal reaction to a bereavement, but are rarely discussed because people fear they might be considered insane or mentally destabilized by their loss. Strange. Most people don't talk about the fact that they see dead loved ones because they'll probably be seen as insane. Bible authors did not have that concern. They were not worried about it one bit. How many people see dead loved ones? Seeing a deceased spouse is remarkably common. Between 30 and 60% of elderly widowed people experience so-called bereavement hallucinations. I think that would explain it, Frank. That would probably explain it.
They thought that would be blasphemy for a man to claim to be God. And why would they invent a resurrected Jesus? They already thought they were God's chosen people. They had no motive to invent a resurrected Jesus. And certainly they could not have invented it in Jerusalem, where an empty tomb existed. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the New Testament writers did not create the resurrection.
Thank you for the super chat, Jacob. I appreciate it. Do I have alert box? No, alert box is still up. Alert box should be fine. Thank you, Peter. Yes, I am a lot happier now. Much happier. Significantly happier now that I have gotten laid, pretty much. That's simple.
The resurrection created the New Testament writers. There would be no New Testament if it wasn't for the resurrection. Now, even if the New Testament never existed, Christianity would still be true. Why? Because Christianity is based on an event, the resurrection. Do you realize there were thousands of Christians?
Which didn't happen. There was no resurrection. Just like most of the events in most religions. Like what is the one where the bombing of the volcanoes in Scientology or like, yeah, that didn't happen either. So most of these religions are made up.
Before a line in the New Testament was ever written. Why? Because an event occurred, the resurrection. You have to have more faith to believe it didn't occur than it did. And if God exists, and he does, and can create the universe out of nothing, then he can certainly resurrect Jesus from the dead.
All right, so we debunked all of his claims there. Easy. All right, let's go to the next one. Videos. No, I didn't want that. Go back. Videos, sort by most popular. That's a 2-hour debate. Hitchens. Frank Turek answers 3 questions from
Yes, sir. What's your name?
Hello, my name is Carter.
Hey, Carter.
And I'd very much like to begin by addressing your offensive moral law argument that without God as an objective moral standard, we atheists, those who do not have the influence of theism, would be Hitler-esque amoral beings.
Okay, let me stop right there because that's not the case. I never said that atheists can't be moral. I never said atheists don't know morality. In fact, atheists know morality just like everybody else. We know morality because it's written on our hearts. What I'm saying is that atheists can't justify morality.
Sure we can. Like most philosophers are moral realists. Most philosophers are also atheists. So there's many different ways to justify morality without God. Like Platonic morality is one. Evolution is one. Different kinds of moral laws are another one. You can justify morality in many ways without a God. God is actually a terrible basis of morality. It fails for a number of reasons. One, the Euthyphro dilemma: is something good because God said it was good, or did God say it was good because it's good based on some independent reason? If it's only good because God said it's good, well, then it's subjective. It's based on what he said, subjective and arbitrary, so it's not an objective morality. If it's good based off some independent reason, that's not his consciousness choices, then whatever that independent reason is, well, we can have that without a God. So we can justify it just like you do, just like your God does. So either God-based morality is subjective and arbitrary, or it's based on something independent of God, in which case atheists can use whatever the independent thing of God is to justify morality without the God. You kind of lose situation there, Frankie.
That's the point. In fact, I had to say this several times to Christopher Hitchens. Christopher, I'm not saying you're a bad guy. Christopher, I'm not saying you don't know morality. In fact, I like Christopher. I thought he was a good guy. What I'm saying is you can't justify why not murder innocent people to get what you want.
Law of nature, Platonic object, the nature of the universe. Any of those would work just fine, better than a God.
That's the point. It's a point about ontology, not a point about epistemology. It's not a point about how you know the moral law. It's a point about why does the moral law exist.
I may return to address this, or the gentleman behind me may address it, but I'd really like to address your design argument.
Okay.
As I understood that you've argued that a painting or a creation, to use the term painting, implies a painter, or a design implies a designer. But I must ask, who designed God? And if no one designed God, if God is timeless, spaceless, and immaterial, and he existed eternally in an uncaused fashion, then why can't nature exist in the exact same way, in an eternal, uncaused, spaceless, timeless, immaterial fashion? Why can't our uncaused origins
Good question.
be as marvelous and precise as God, but be natural causes?
Excellent question, Carter. That's a very good question. You're right that we have two options here. Either the universe is the uncaused first cause, or something beyond the universe is the uncaused first cause. The problem is that all the evidence points to the fact that the universe is not the uncaused first cause.
No, it doesn't. There's no evidence that points to that. It just points to the fact that our universe had a beginning, not all natural stuff. So he's conflating universe with cosmos, like our universe with all natural stuff. Universe, in this context, does not mean all natural stuff. So it does not follow that necessarily everything in the universe, all natural stuff, had a beginning. It's false. Like, that is against the consensus in physics, which I showed at the beginning, which he made this argument for, which is the fact that no, space-time is emergent from some other more fundamental natural theory that isn't a God.
And I didn't have time to go through that evidence tonight. That was part one. But I'll give it to you very briefly in an acronym, SURGE, S-U-R-G-E. S stands for the second law of thermodynamics.
Which doesn't indicate that the universe had a beginning. In fact, that's another thing we've checked before. Does the Big Bang violate the second law of thermodynamics? Does the Big Bang violate the second law of thermodynamics?
Physicist at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, California. And I think about how the laws of physics came to be, what they are, and how they make the universe that we live in. So the Big Bang doesn't break.
What does that say? Why do I think? How do I show that again? Mirrored. I guess I could just go back to my stream. Let's see here. Let's keep doing
any
this.
of the laws of thermodynamics. The two big ones are the first law.
Let's go back there.
So the Big
Does the Big Bang violate the laws of thermodynamics?
So the Big Bang doesn't break any of the laws of thermodynamics. The two big ones are the first law and the second law. The first law basically says that energy is conserved. The second law says that entropy increases, the disorderliness, the disorganization of things increases over time. So the Big Bang, we don't know if it was the beginning of the universe or not. If the universe has zero energy total, which is possible, then the Big Bang could have been the beginning of the universe, and it could have just been the first moment in the history of the universe without violating conservation of energy, because energy is zero. The second law, the entropy increasing, is an interesting case because near the time of the Big Bang, entropy was very, very, very low. That's why it's been increasing for the past 14 billion years. So that doesn't violate the second law, but the question is, why did the Big Bang have such a low entropy? And the answer there is that nobody knows. This is an open question for cosmology. Why was the condition near the Big Bang so special, so organized?
All right, so that answers that question. So nope, it doesn't violate second law of thermodynamics. So it's incorrect, Frank. Incorrect, Frankie, Frank. I got your question. So the question was from the Lord of Adam. Why do you think most top athletes in fight sports are religious? Just to name a few, Khabib is Muslim, Tyson Fury is Christian, Evander Holyfield is Christian, etc. Well, that's because most people are Christian. So most chicken farmers are Christian, most cow farmers are Christian, most plumbers are Christian, most everything is Christian. What we see a lack of Christianity in is the top intellectual fields. So scientific fields, Nobel Prizes are actually mostly Jewish, which are mostly atheists. So in most fields that don't involve high levels of intellect, most people are Christian or religious, Muslim in some other fields. In most fields that do have high levels of intellect, like scientific fields, most people are atheists or Jews, which are atheists. They're also atheists. Still atheists.
Which says that the universe is running down. Well, if it's running down, somebody must have wound it up. We'd have no. That's not what it says. We just went over this with Sean Carroll.
No energy left right now if the universe was eternal. The U stands for the fact that the universe is expanding. Edwin Hubble detected that back in 1929 and shows that everything came from a single point, a point actual.
No, Frank. It doesn't say everything. It says our universe. Our universe came from a single point. That doesn't mean everything, Frank. Like I don't know why theists keep making this confusion that the universe that we experience, our universe, somehow means literally everything. That's not what it means. No one thinks that.
Of infinite density, the singularity, which is actually nothing. So the universe had a beginning. The R in surge stands for the radiation afterglow. That's the remnant heat discovered by Penzias and Wilson in 1965.
Cosmic microwave background. Yeah, that still doesn't indicate a god. Cogito. In philosophy, there is no contradiction with past infinites. Can you give an example? Sure. Is there a contradiction with past infinites? I forget. I wonder.
Which is literally the smoking gun to the Big Bang. There's heat, remnant heat from the Big Bang still out there, which shows that the universe had a beginning. The G in surge stands for the great galaxy seeds, which were very fine temperature variations in that radiation afterglow that allowed the galaxies to form in the early universe. And the E stands for Einstein's theory of general relativity, which
doesn't even solve quantum mechanics. So it doesn't have anything to do with the origin of the universe. Like what?
Shows that time, space, and matter are correlative, that they came into existence together, that space, time, and matter literally had a beginning. Einstein knew this in 1916.
Which doesn't indicate that there wasn't something before it, so it's not really a good example.
Then observational evidence began in 1919 when Eddington did his test on the eclipse. And then Hubble discovered the expanding universe in 1929, and then on to the radiation afterglow and the great galaxy seeds after that. So,
cogito. An example of a past infinite or an infinite would be just numbers. Like numbers are an infinite. So having a past infinite would just not entail. There's no logical contradiction. It's not saying P and not P. The logical contradiction comes in when they say like time is a theory of time. If there's a theory of time, then there would be a logical contradiction to say that if every point in time there was like some predecessor point of time required to get to the current point of time, then there would be a logical contradiction. But no one says that. So you don't actually need, like, there's no actual logical contradiction, like A, P and not P, and past infinite. It's just not a contradictory statement.
The evidence points to the fact that the universe is not the uncaused first cause. So there must be something beyond the universe that is.
Which is just another natural thing. Yeah, Frank, that's true. Which is just more natural stuff.
And that thing that's beyond the universe must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. And if you're
just some guy join the YouTube bandwagon and make a tier list of apologetics arguments, like, I guess I could do that. That'd be interesting. Maybe I'll think about that one. Cease. What's the link? I'm just using the cross-examined website. So I just go to the cross-examined website, go to videos, and then go to most popular. And that's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm just going to the cross-examined YouTube channel, videos most popular, going down the list. It's just cross-examined YouTube channel.
Timeless. Do you have a beginning?
No.
No. So God is not, he didn't have a beginning. He's the uncaused first cause. And look, Aristotle, Plato, they all knew this. They knew there had to be an unmoved mover.
Aristotle literally himself said that there is no contradiction with a past infinite. I don't remember which debate this was in. I know there was a debate. I think it was with a philosopher or something where he actually went over this with, I forget, William Lane Craig, where he actually said there was no contradiction with the past infinite. And the philosopher who was debating against William Lane Craig said Aristotle actually agreed with this and said that no, that Aristotle himself agreed that there was like a past infinite. So that was false.
I believe that you're drawing a false dichotomy because we do not know that the original cause was God. There is no reason to say that an intelligent designer was the first cause, the uncaused first cause that caused everything else. I do not have the training or expertise to refute such science, and in fact, I accept your conclusion that the Big Bang had a beginning and space-time and matter came into existence from a point of origin. But we do not know that this point of origin is God. Calling it God is to make a false assumption. Another reason for the existence of everything might simply be that other dimensions had the power and the marvelousness and complexity to create a situation where where the Big Bang could be brought into existence and space-time and matter could begin to exist without an intelligent designer having a hand.
Well, Carter, what you just...
I don't think this guy's an actor. Like, what he's saying is a legitimate explanation of the Big Bang. So, I mean, most atheists aren't extremely well versed in these topics, and so they don't know how to express them in the best way. So most people would sound like actors, I guess, who don't know how to express the argument in the best way. So I don't hold that against this guy. I don't think that's really an issue. Oops.
described there is what we would call God. God is in another dimension that has the ability to bring these dimensions into existence. So if you want to call it another dimension, you can call it that. But that's exactly what we mean by God.
But then why is there a theology? Why do we worship God? If he could easily be called another...
Excellent point. You don't have to worship.
Cogito, like, no, the claim is that past infinites don't have a logical contradiction. That's all you need. Like, I don't actually need to give you an example of a past infinite. Like, I haven't been around for infinity time. There could have been, like, time itself could be a past infinite, and that wouldn't entail a contradiction. So there's just literally no contradiction with a past infinite. And so, yeah, so there could be an actual past infinite, and there's no logical contradiction with that. You don't need to give an example of one. It just literally doesn't entail a logical contradiction. That's what it means to not have a contradiction.
Worship God. In fact, Aristotle never worshiped God. In fact, the Greeks never got their theology and philosophy together. They knew that there had to be an unmoved mover, but they never put the two together and worshiped the unmoved mover. So you don't have to worship the unmoved mover. You don't have to.
And they had it more right. So the Greeks are actually correct here to say, yeah, there's probably some kind of a fundamental thing in nature, and to think it was a god is just a silly thing to do. So it's completely ridiculous to make that connection, which is why they didn't do it.
You can do whatever you want. That's why you have free will. God loves you enough to give you free will. You can love him or reject him. That's up to you.
But on that point, you do have the free will to accept or reject God, but the obvious conclusion is that rejection of God will lead to eternal damnation in hell. So in reality, we do not really have the choice to accept or not to accept God. We must ultimately accept God, assuming we choose to avoid perdition.
Well, if you want to avoid, well, let me back up for a second. There's only two possibilities if God exists. In eternity, you're going to be with him or you're not going to be with him, right? That's logically the only two options. If you want to be with him, you will seek him out and be with him. If you don't want to be with him, God will not force you into his presence against your will.
Yeah, instead they'll force you to suffer and die and won't let you go to your own universe. So the problem here is that, well, God could give you the option to go to your own universe of your own design. That would be fine. Like if that was the option here, that would be great, as long as he didn't force us to live on this planet with all the suffering without our consent first. So if God just gave us all the options to go to our own universe of our own design, that would be fine. And if that's what hell is, great. That's perfectly fine, hell. The problem is God's still immoral for forcing us to be here without our consent.
In fact, let me make the objection stronger than what you're making it. You're very polite, but I debated an atheist who was a little bit more direct. And let me tell you, this man he's a good man. I like him. His name is Eddie Tabash. He's an attorney from Beverly Hills. We debated at University of Michigan a number of months ago. And he looked at me during the Q&A and he said, Frank, my mother was a survivor of the Holocaust. She lived an awful life. Somebody presented her with the gospel and she rejected it. Is she in hell right now? Whoa. I said, Eddie, I don't know where your mother is. I don't know if she made a profession of faith in her last moments. But
such a dick thing to say for Frank there. Like, oh, maybe she had an actual conversion, even though she denied it. She just converted and you didn't know it. So she could be in heaven, kind of evading the entire point, Frank. Like, holy shit. Like, the whole point of the question was, if she lived a miserable life and rejected God, would she be in hell? Kind of evading the point there.
But if she didn't, then God will not force her into his presence against her will. God is too loving for that. And I asked the audience this question. In fact, I'll ask you as an audience this question. Ladies, is there anybody in here who's ever had a man pursue you and you did not want that man to pursue you? You did not want to date him. Anyone in here? Of course. In fact, some of you are going, yeah, he's sitting right next to me right now. He won't leave me alone. I said, okay, ladies, suppose this man continues to pursue you and continues to pursue you. And you say, look, I only like you as a friend. Ladies, why don't you just take the knife, stick it in, and turn it? Because every man in here has heard this. I like you, but only as a friend. Well, suppose he continues to pursue you, and he gets to the point where he says, look,
Frank, you're missing the point here. So if your sky daddy forced us to be in this world without our consent, we don't really have a choice, do we? Like, he's already like taken us into his slaves. We are slaves of God, whether we want to be or not. So this isn't like he's pursuing us without consent. It's more like he's entrapped us and forced us to be slaves in this world without our consent already. And now he's going to punish us if we don't do what he wants us to do. So your analogy here is a false analogy, Frankie boy, because God's already enslaved us to this world without our consent. Did I choose to be here? No. I wanted to go to my own universe of my own design. Did God let me do that? No. He forced me to be here. So clearly, we're already slaves. Doesn't quite work that way, Frank.
I love you so much, I'm going to force you to love me. Can he do that? No, he can't do that. Love, by definition, must be freely given. So if he truly did love you, what would he do?
Give me my own universe of my own design. That's what he would do from before I was born. So I wouldn't have to actually live in this crappy world with the crappy shit I had to experience. And I'd just be able to go to my own universe of my own design as I wanted. That is what he would have done if there was actually an all-powerful, all-loving being.
He would leave you alone. That's exactly what God does. He keeps sending us cards, letters, and flowers while we're here. And if we keep rejecting him, he gives us up to our own desires. And that ultimately what hell is. Ultimately what hell is. Hell is separation from God. So
I don't think it's actually hell there. I think that's actually just rationality, reasonableness. It's like, I don't want to be next to a sky daddy, an evil sky daddy who mass murdered people. It's like saying, I don't want to have Hitler as my God. This isn't hell. Not having Hitler as God, not hell, just rationality.
You're free in hell. You can continue to reject God in hell. But you're confined to hell. In fact, hell is...
But that kind of defeats the point there, Frank. If I'm confined to hell and I can't go to my own universe of my own design, that's slavery, Frank. That kind of like just shows the entire point of the argument is that God is evil for forcing me into a punishment I didn't choose without my consent. Or I have to obey his words. That's kind of the point, Frank. God evil.
Is a quarantine of evil. That's what it is. And heaven, of course, is being in the very presence of God. God loves you too much to force you into his presence against your will. Thanks, Carter.
All right, next video. Videos. Most popular. That looks interesting.
Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's your name?
Caleb,
Hey, Caleb, how are you?
gentleman who asked the son question is my dad.
Oh.
Cliff over there.
Hey, Dad. How you doing?
So obviously he's a Christian, and I'm not quite sure what I am. I've had a constant kind of struggle my whole life with what I believe, but so I'm not well versed in or chaptered in the Bible. My question was, there's, I believe, several times in the Bible where it seems like God gets legitimately angry at people at some point over slaves with the plague, and kind of along the lines of a previous question, if he knows what's going to happen and he's an all-loving being,
Right.
is this like pure emotional anger? Or, I mean, he should have expected it, so is it
excellent
just
question.
an
Yes.
unemotional reaction, or?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Caleb. We need to remember, you stay there because we may interact a little bit. We need to remember that the Bible is...
Mike, I've asked him to debate. He hasn't agreed to it yet. I actually met him in person in Minnesota a few times. But if he agrees to it, I'll definitely debate him live in person. That'd be really cool.
Is written from an observer perspective. So there are times when it appears, say, God is angry with Israel and he's going to wipe Israel out. And then Moses goes and prays. And apparently changes God's mind from our perspective, right? But in reality, what's going on is that God always knew that Moses would pray, and he always knew that he would relent based on what Moses had done. It's written from an observer perspective. And that's the way we do things as well. In fact, you read in the Bible that
Yes, so God already knew that everyone was going to turn away from him and he was going to drown everyone in a global flood. So why didn't he just make a better decision? God knew his robot was broken. So why did he make the broken robot if he knew it was broken? It's kind of a dumb argument. Dumb God. Dumb design, right?
the sun rises and the sun sets. Well, we know it doesn't really do that, right? I mean, we know that we're spinning and we're going around the sun, and the sun isn't moving around us. We're going around the sun. And that's how the sun rises and sun sets. But if you go home tonight and you watch the news and you watch the weatherman on there, the meteorologist, Dr. So-and-so, will say sunrise tomorrow, 6:52. He doesn't say Earth rotation will become apparent at 6:52. We use observational language, and the Bible uses it the same way. So God is not changing, we're changing, and God is always angry with sin, and he's always pleased with trust in him. And what happens is we move from one aspect of God, wrath, when we're in sin, and then we move into grace when we trust in him for his free gift. It's like if you're riding a bike against the wind, you say the wind is against me. When you turn around and go the other way, you say the wind is for me. Who changed, the wind or you? You changed.
So our interpretation of his reaction.
Yes, the Bible's written from frequently an anthropomorphic perspective, our perspective, not necessarily God's.
Yeah, anthropomorphic perspective, like because it's written as an anthropomorphic sky daddy. It's probably why it's an anthropomorphic perspective made up.
I appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Kate.
Technically correct, how long? Just avoiding all the questions.
You mentioned the acorn analogy, that an acorn is programmed to grow up into a tree.
Yes.
If things are directed how God wanted them, then why did he direct me to love women as one loves men?
Well, the question might be, how do you know God directed you to do that? Right? And there are a lot of things that go on in this world that all of us have. All of us have certain orientations to things we ought not do according to God. but yet we still do them. That's why we live with a fallen nature, right? All of us have a fallen nature. Should we expect that in this fallen world that God would give us a nature that wasn't fallen?
No.
No. So we're all struggling with sin. That's why we need a Savior. Because everyone, you and me and everyone in this room, needs the sacrifice that Christ provided, regardless of what our feelings are, regardless of...
Well, I mean, if he created us fallen, that's kind of his fault. Why do I need a Savior for the problem that he created? It doesn't make any sense. So he created me with the thing I can't choose, which is sin. And so I need a Savior because he made me broken. So he made something that to fix me because of his mistake. It doesn't quite make sense, Frank.
Which way we're directed based on nature or nurture. And as you know, there's a big debate over how much is nature, how much is nurture.
Not really. It's pretty much all nature. Like it's definitely not nurture. We know it's nature because it happens in multiple species at some like 10% rate. Definitely not nurture. It's nature. It's biology. We know LGBT is biology, biologically determined. So it's 100% nature, not something you get a choice in. So if it's a sin, God programmed it into you because God's a dick.
For all of our sexual orientations.
But are my feelings inherently wrong to have?
Are feelings inherently wrong to have? I don't think there's a way you can be blamed for having feelings. Look, I have feelings all day that I ought not act on. And sometimes I fail. But it's not the feelings that are the issue, it's the action that flows from them.
Wait a minute. Bible specifically says if you look at another woman with lust in your eyes, you have committed adultery. So the Bible says the feelings itself are evil. What? Wait, what, Frank? What? Are you contradicting the Bible here, Frank? I think you got to read your Bible here, Frank.
Actually, though, if you look at what Jesus said, when you look at Matthew chapter 5, Jesus actually ratchets up the standard. He says if you're just angry with your brother, you're guilty. Well, thanks, Jesus. I don't have a prayer of living up to that.
Okay, but it's not about anger.
Don't. He says, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. I can't do that. You can't do that. Nobody in this room can do that. Who can do it? Only He can. That's why we need Him. So we all have these struggles, Sammy. I have struggles. You have struggles. But for us to say that God's at fault for these struggles, no, God's not at fault for the struggle.
What? How could God not be at fault for this? Because if it's biological, and we can't control biology, and your God created biology, then it must necessarily be God's fault. How could this not be God's fault? Like, we didn't do it. God says it's a sin to be gay, but being gay is a biological determined thing that has nothing to do with choices. Who controls biology, Frank? Like, this is basic logic here, Frank.
Struggles.
I don't believe that.
Right. You don't believe what?
I don't believe that he's at fault. I think we
Right.
all make mistakes, but I don't think something like love that's supposedly pure. It can be pure in the way that a man loves a woman, or a man loves a man, or a woman loves a woman. Who's to say that the way you love your wife is any different from the way I'm going to love someone in the future, whether it be a man or a woman?
Well, it's not me to say anything because I'm not the moral arbiter of the universe.
That's true.
Right? So I don't decide right and wrong. This is why when people come to me and say, well, don't impose your morality on me.
Frank, the question wasn't about literally you. Come on, you have to address the actual question. The actual question is why does what your silly book say mean anything that corresponds to reality? Your silly book says being gay is immoral. Why do you think it's right other than because your silly book said so?
Like I said earlier, I said, this isn't my morality. I didn't make any of this up. In fact, there were things I
Right, it's the old goat herders who made all of us up.
wish were different. But I'm not the general manager of the universe. I'm not God. So I guess back to your question, you'd have to define exactly what you mean by love. What does love mean? Can you care for somebody of the same sex? Of course you can. I do. The question is, should you go further than that into some sort of romantic relationship?
Yep, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. The Bible is just dumb.
That's the question.
I think you should.
Well, okay, you can take that. It's a free country. But scripturally, if you believe in the scriptures and if you believe in natural law.
Natural law? What? There's no natural law that says homosexuality is wrong. There are literal species that are asexual, that are... So asexual reproduction, reproduce with themselves. Like that's technically self love, self sex love, same sex love. So are asexual animals criminals? There's also animals that are gay. I think there might be animals that reproduce male to male. Gotta check that out because they're asexual. So if they're asexual and they asexually reproduce and then change to a male, then does that count as gay? Like I'm really curious about this. So like if there's asexual reproduction snails or snails that can change their gender, like animals that can change gender, clownfish, rosses. I don't know rosses. Moray eels, gobies, and other fish species are known to change sex, including reproduction functions. So let's say two clownfish fall in love as guy clownfish, and then one changes to a female clownfish and they reproduce, and then he changes back to a guy clownfish. Is that fine? Is that fine, Frank? Because or is it wrong when they're both male clownfish? Is that evil at that point? Like, how does this become wrong, Frank? Like, is it just the physical organs? Is that what makes it wrong, Frank? Because this is kind of confusing here, Frank. If God made animals that can change sex, is it still wrong? What if humans could change sex? What if we in the future can change sex between male and female, which is probably going to be able to happen? What happens then, Frank?
Define natural law.
Natural law is the idea that everybody intuitively understands.
That's not how laws work, Frank. Natural law is not everybody intuitively understands. Like, no, our intuition isn't a natural law, Frank. It's not. No.
Moral right and wrong on the big issues. That there's a natural design to us.
Natural law, natural design. No, Frank. No, oh my God, no. Wow, that's so dumb. Like, a law is a description of a feature of nature. Like, it has nothing to do with some kind of moral framework here.
There's a natural design to the universe that we're intended to go in a particular direction.
No, there's not. There isn't one. Like, literally, like the vast majority of scientists and all rational people say that's wrong.
And that.
So the intuition is actually against you on that one, Frank.
We know we're supposed to shun evil and we're supposed to seek the good. So.
And you think that natural law was founded by, like, Christianity?
No. It existed long before Christianity. That's
Founded
why,
by God.
for example, Noah, the entire generation of Noah was judged. They didn't have any scripture. They didn't have any Bible.
Yes, I point to a moral natural law. That is not the same as a thing that God had done. So God done a designed law is not the thing. So not quite the same, Charles. Or not Charles. Benevolent intelligence. Does the Christian God violate the law of identity by having three persons in one? Can someone be themselves and their child at the same time? It's a good question. Would that be the law of identity? I think that'd be the law of excluded. Is it the law of the excluded middle? Law of non-contradiction? Itself and not itself at the same time? It's definitely violating something. It's definitely violating one of the laws of, probably multiple of the laws of logic. God being himself and not himself at the same time and being someone else. So it's probably the law of non-contradiction. God can be himself and not himself at the same time. God can be himself and someone else at the same time.
But God expected them to know basic right and wrong because he had written it on their hearts. So you don't need the Bible to know basic right and wrong. Everyone already knows it. Now we can suppress it, we can reject it, we can go our own way, and all of us do on occasion, but it's still there.
Doink. Did God really command the Canaanites to be killed? That's a good question.
But a question I have, it kind of has dealt with my past. Definitely grew up as an atheist, and an atheist for a couple years of college. But when we talked about moralism, or we're talking about moral standards, how do we reconcile the moral standards that we see in the Old Testament versus the moral standards of the New Testament? So when I refer to the Old Testament, I'm typically referring to specifically like Joshua and Judges, where you see the like Israelites going into Canaan and conquering kingdoms, and it's saying to devote that all to utter destruction, man, woman, livestock, burned to the ground, killed. You also see like the women being like made slaves or being like added into the family, but also that you see the God of the New Testament says every life has there's sanctity to life, and that every life has meaning, and I'm dying for that meaning. But yet you see all these people dying.
Well, you guys, there's a bunch of issues in there. Let's just take the hardest issue, which I think is this one. Is God immoral for killing the Canaanites? Right? That's basically.
Yep. Yes. The answer would be yes. Yes.
What you're talking in Joshua, okay? Well, first of all, the question I want to ask is, if there is no God, why is any Old Testament atrocity wrong? Because atheists
there's an objective morality, and you don't need God to justify objective morality.
typically answer this question. I understand you're not an atheist, but when they say, well, the God of the Bible is immoral, I go, time out, what's your moral standard? If you're an atheist, there is no moral standard. It's just your opinion, okay? But a fair question for an atheist would be to say, yeah, but you're saying your God's loving, so it's a problem for your worldview. Okay, fair enough. So the next question I want to ask is this. Is God arbitrary, or does he give reasons for judging people in the Old Testament?
Well, I mean, it can still be arbitrary even if you make up a reason. So if your reason is arbitrary, it's still arbitrary. So the fact that God made up reasons doesn't mean they're not arbitrary reasons.
Solid question.
He gives reasons, right? He doesn't just wake up like a mob boss and go, Canaanites, I want them dead, right?
Pretty much, that's pretty much what he does, yeah. He just makes up the reasons. You can say, he wakes up one morning and say, I don't like people killing, even though I've ordered killing all the time, therefore I want them dead. That's kind of what he does. Just like, you know, all the other people doing killing, it's fine when it's commanded by God, but if someone kills without the commandment of God, well, then this is when it's a problem. This is when it's a problem in the Old Testament.
He's got reasons for it. And probably the biggest reason, after 400 years of warning, is that the Canaanites were sacrificing their children on the molten hot god Molech, this idol.
We're Canaanites sacrificing children. We're Canaanites sacrificing children. Sacrificing Canaanites by sacrificing Israelite children to Yahweh in the same way Canaanites. So Jews sacrifice children to the Yahweh in the same way. Did Canaanites sacrificing children? Keep looking.
They would heat this thing up. It was metal, and then they'd put their babies on the arms of this being, this idol, and watch their babies sizzle to death. In fact, Plutarch, who was a Greek writer, this is not in the Bible,
this seems very suspiciously false. I doubt this happened. It seems unlikely.
Says that the villagers would beat their drums louder when this was going on, so the parents couldn't hear the screams of their own children being sacrificed. Now, on every college campus I go to, typically an atheist will stand up, well, if there's a good God, why doesn't he stop all the evil in the world? Well, here's a situation where God saw evil and said, that's it, we got to stop it. Israelites, go stop it. And now they're complaining, right? So, why complain that God doesn't stop evil, but then complain when he does? Now, what they will say is, yeah, but God went too far. He said, wipe out everybody, including the children. God's stopping the Canaanites for killing children, but then God says go in and kill them anyway. Now, how does that make any sense? Well, there's two ways of looking at this. One way is a book written by Paul Copan. I don't know if you've ever heard this book. It's called Is God a Moral Monster? And
yes, God is a moral monster. Even if they did sacrifice their children, it would still be immoral to mass murder them all. It'd be easier to just take away their children, to change their minds. Mass murdering them is not the moral thing to do here. Like you could just teleport their children to someone who'll take care of them. That would solve the problem without mass murdering them. So mass murdering them is still immoral if you're an all-powerful God. It could be a justified immoral action. Like if you were powerful enough to, or not powerful enough to change them without killing them, and you, well, being technically that still wouldn't work, because if you're killing them, you killed the children too. So God killed the children too. So it doesn't make any sense, because if your goal is to stop them from killing children, killing them all and killing the children doesn't accomplish this. So if God's killing the children just like he's accusing them of doing, isn't that kind of hypocritical a bit?
Pan's an expert in the Old Testament, and he says when you read something like in, say, Deuteronomy 7, where it says, go wipe everybody out, man, women, child, all that,
Lol, benevolent.
you've got to realize this is known as hyperbolic language, because if you read the next verse, it says, and then don't intermarry with them. You go, wait a minute. If you just wiped everybody out, how could you intermarry with them?
That's not a contradiction, Frank. So if you intermarried with them, they could become a part of your family, and they're no longer Canaanites because they become your property. So that's actually just stating that you need to kill them all and not have them become your property. So that's not actually a contradiction. That's just a clarification there, Frank. So it's literally just saying kill them all. Kill them all and don't take them as your property.
They're dead. The point is that in the ancient Near East culture, they used language like this to demonstrate that this had to be a victory, a decisive victory. It didn't mean, it would be like us saying, well, you know, the Chiefs annihilated the Rams. We wouldn't mean that the Rams no longer exist, right? It's just a strong way of saying they beat them badly. That's one view. The other view is the traditional view that, no, he literally meant to take their lives. Well, what do we say to that? Let's take the harder view, that God said, everybody should die. Can God do that? Here's my question. Nope. Is God committing murder by ending lives on earth?
Yes. If they don't want to die and you kill them without their consent, that's murder. Yes.
When somebody dies, does God murder them?
Yep.
No, God can't murder anyone because he's the creator of life.
It's begging the question there, Frank. If he kills them without consent, it's murder.
So when he takes life, that's up to him.
Still murder, Frank. It doesn't stop it from being murder. It's still murder.
He can resurrect life. We can't do that, so we don't have the authority to take innocent human beings.
It's still murder, Frank. If you kill someone, then resurrect them, you've still murdered them and then just resurrected them after you've murdered them.
Lives. But God does. So if God wants to take somebody's life, he can. If he has a reason for it, he might explain.
Still immoral, still murder. So even if he was powerful enough to do it, he could physically do it. It would still be immoral and it would still be murder. Frank, like what you're saying doesn't make sense here. Saying that he has the right to murder you doesn't stop it from being murder, Frank.
Explain the reason he might not, but he has the authority to do that. In fact, if Christianity is true, people don't really die, they just change location, right?
The change location, the S.J. Thomason change location, came from the Frank Tureks.
Move from one life to the next life. So God has the right to usher people into the next life, whether they are 2 years old or 82 years old.
God can murder old people and he can murder babies.
God can do that. We can't. Now, one more thing on this, and Copan goes into a lot more detail than I'm doing here.
I had Paul Copan on my channel. Anybody, in case you're curious, I have an interview with him on my channel.
But one more detail on this I think we need to recognize. The Old Testament theocracy was unique and temporary. It was not the ideal for all time, but the means to a promised new covenant.
Yeah, so God can murder people in the Old Testament, but not the New Testament. That makes perfect sense.
Covenant.
Tinkle Tink, am I interested in the symbology of the Bible? No, not really. I mean, like, symbology of ancient text is not really a very useful thing that can do anything to progress society or technology or anything. It's kind of a waste of time for the most part.
God wanted to get the promised people in the promised land to bring forth the promised Messiah to be a blessing to the whole world. And if he gave 400 years of warnings to the Canaanites who were doing these detestable practices and they wouldn't stop, his only choice at that point, with free creatures, was to use force to push them out or to drive them out.
All-powerful being can't come up with a different solution other than to kill people. Genius. Like, all-powerful being couldn't have, I don't know, teleported them, personal force fields, constructed barriers, technology. No, murder. Just mass murder them all. All-powerful being just can't do anything other than just mass murdering because he's all-powerful.
And that's apparently what he did. Now, God can do that. We can't, but God can.
Special pleading.
So, the Old Testament is, as I say here, temporary, and it was never meant to be the ideal law for all time. In fact, everything from Exodus 20, the Ten Commandments, all the way through Deuteronomy does not apply to Christians. You know the Ten Commandments don't apply to Christians? Did you know that? only if they're repeated in the New Testament, and 9 out of the 10 are. The only one that's not repeated is keep holy the Sabbath. Why? Because who's the Sabbath? Jesus. He's already arrived. The Sabbath is our rest. But unless something's repeated and renewed in the New Testament, it's not applicable to Christians today. And this isn't taught very often in church either. Oftentimes we just go to the Bible like it's some kind of fortune book and just stick our finger in there and start reading. It's not.
That's pretty much what all Christians, including Frank Turk, do, for sure.
It's not the way the Bible is supposed to be read. In fact, this is going to sound shocking, but there are no verses in the Bible. Did you know that? There are no verses in the Bible. The verses were added about 500 years ago to allow us to navigate the text.
What you're saying. Oh, I get what you're saying.
But there are no verses in the Bible.
Yeah, in the original, there weren't the actual verse numbers. Those were added later. Yeah, the verses themselves, like.
In the Bible is it helps us navigate the text. The disadvantage is we tend to think that these verses are individual nuggets of truth that we can apply any way we want. That's not the way the Bible's intended to be read. About the only place you can do that is Proverbs in most cases. Everywhere else, you've got to figure out the context and what's going on. Does this make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. There's a lot more in the book, though. Please get the book. Not my book. I'm talking about the book from Paul Copan called "Is God a Moral Monster?"
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep, God is a moral monster. That is definitely the case. All right, guys, I'm going to get